No secrets. So we're no secrets. So we're live on internet now. Welcome everyone who are watching us online, and welcome everyone in the room here for the side event on co-creating a future with youth and local pact for the future. This side event is specifically designed to have a discussion and an inclusive and informal discussion with the stakeholders that are going to be speaking today on different youth engagement opportunities or different sort of youth engagement and outreach efforts that we are already doing and what we are proposing to do in the wake of the Summit of the Future. As the Summit of the Future also approaches fast, and before that we also have the 69th UN Civil Society Conference in May taking place in Nairobi, and we're going to talk about a little bit about the youth engagement in the summit in Nairobi, on how young people can get engaged in the summit and both summits, the Summit of the Future and the Civil Society Conference, they are all interlinked with each other. And meanwhile, we're going to also discuss about the 9th and the 10th edition of the International Youth Conference, and something that we are proposing and planning to do is the Youth Summit of the Future during the same time when the Summit of the Future will be taking place here at the UN headquarters. We're planning to do with the help of civil society organizations and other stakeholders on how we can pull together the Youth Summit of the Future and include the voices of young people from all around the world, either they're in New York or anywhere else. We're going to talk about the role of digital tools and digital innovation, that what role they can play, and they're already playing in outreach and inclusion of young people into the decision-making processes at the UN. They were being co-organized. It is organized by the IAAI and co-organized by the Human Habitat, AFS Intercultural Program, International Youth Conference, and Vanguard. And thank you so much for all the support. The co-organizers are getting us to pull this together. And at the end of the event, we are going to have at least 10-point action items to move forward with. Like in the panel, we have the youth delegates from the permanent mission of Germany, ILTA and LEF, and then we have the prominent civil society youth leaders such as Steve and Jennifer with us, who have been really vocal and in the inclusion of youth and human rights. And Steve actually going to talk about the spiritual inclusion as well, so that's going to be really refreshing. We have Aishu here with us, who is the advisor for the UN Youth Representative Steering Committee for the UN Department of Global Communications. And we have Sushmita here, who's also from a prominent civil society organization. And later on, we are going to be joined by Ms. Howard Diallo, who is chief of the UN Civil Society Unit. We are going to be joined by the UN Habitat Youth Programs Chief Douglas Reagan from Nairobi, and from Austria we will be the main organizer of this program will be joining us from Austria online, Dr. Miroslav Polzer. To start with the program, I'm directly going to jump in with the talk to give the floor to Lev, as the topic for you is like you want to know about the Pact for the Future and the inclusion of youth, and what is Pact of the Future and how young people can contribute to it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for giving me the floor and for having us at this side event, and thank all of you for being here. It's so great to see so many familiar faces in the room as well. So really excited. At the beginning of this event, I really want to give an outlook on what the Pact for the Future is and why it matters to us as young people and to everyone else. And I think to understand that, we really need to look at why the Pact for the Future and the Summit of the Future were created. For the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, the General Assembly tasked the Secretary General with identifying the challenges we face today and solutions for tomorrow. And the Secretary General took that mandate and wrote a very substantial report. It's called Our Common Agenda. And in our common agenda, he made wide-reaching proposals on how we can improve the United Nations, but the multilateral system as a whole as well, and how we can work better together to address these challenges. And one thing he proposed in that report was to hold a summit of the future, and in that summit to adopt the Pact for the Future, a document adopted by consensus by all member states, to reform the multilateral system that we face today. So that was a few years ago. A lot has happened since then, and notably last week, the Pact for the Future was released. The Zero Draft was released. For those of you who might not be familiar with what the Zero Draft is, the Zero Draft is the first document, the first version of a UN document, which is now going into intergovernmental negotiations where the member states will discuss further on how the Pact is going to look like. But there is also opportunity for civil society engagement, so everyone who is not a member state can also get involved. We've seen this in the formation of the Zero Draft, so civil society organizations were able to submit ideas for the Zero Draft until December 31st, which are now all available on the Summit of the Future website, and I really encourage you to look into it and see what organizations might align with your views, your policy proposals, and with who you can work to further make your voices heard. And until the 12th of February, again, civil society has been asked to submit their ideas on the summit, the same way member states have been, and now negotiations will continue. On the 21st February, this is also an important day to flag down the co-facilitators of the process, which are Germany, our mission, and Namibia, will hold another meeting for civil society representatives to further engage with the process. Now, you've heard me talk a lot about processes and administrative things and deadlines, but I also want to give maybe a call to action on why it matters to get involved in that process and why it is so important, especially for you. The goal of the summit and the Pact for the Future is to change the UN system to better fit everyone. That is a tall goal to reach, and we need to be realistic on what the summit and the Pact can achieve. But this is really the opportunity to engage in that once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make your voices heard in how the summit can be changed. I also really want to stress that the Summit for the Future and the Pact for the Future are very much related to the Sustainable Development Goals. As many of us know, that there is still a long road to go to reaching the Sustainable Development Goals, and time is dwindling fast. But as the Secretary General once very succinctly summarized it, the SDGs are what we want to do, and the Summit for the Future is how we want to do it. And yeah, I think it's also important to keep that in mind when we talk about the Pact for the Future. And now when it comes to youth specifically, there is one chapter in the Pact which is comprised of 5 chapters which go in all directions: peace and security, sustainable development, global governance, science, technology, innovation. But one of the chapters is specifically focused on youth and future generations. And this is the first time that youth have been put in such a center stage in such a high-level process of the United Nations. I think that cannot be overstressed. A whole chapter just about meaningful youth engagement. That is a pivotal chance for us to make our voices heard and to improve the way youth are engaged in the United Nations. We often say nothing about us without us, but everything in the United Nations is about us, because youth is a cross-cutting issue. There is no part of the United Nations, no decision that is made in regards to human rights, sustainable development, or peace and security that does not affect youth, and there is no decision that youth cannot be a tangible voice in and can improve the output by being experts for the lived realities, change makers, innovators, by getting involved in the local communities and on the international stage. And with the Pact for the Future, we really have the opportunity to shape how our common future should look and be a voice in shaping that. So that's my call to action. I think I'll end it there.
We'll have more discussion later on that. Next, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Miroslav Kolzer, who is going to be joining us live from Austria. Miro, you can go live with your presentation.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, friends, a warm welcome to today's side event to the Commission on Social Development on Creating the Future with Youth and Local Pacts for the Future. My name is Miroslav Polzer, and I'm the CEO and founder of IAAI Glotcher, a UN-accredited civil society organization which is building the Global Challenges Action Empowerment Ecosystem Glotcher with culture, technology, and organizational innovation as key pillars. Our vision is to empower everyone, everywhere, to take meaningful and rewarding climate action. And we believe that this year's Summit of the Future is really a very unique opportunity to modernize the UN system, to update the operation system of the UN system in a way that it can integrate also non-state actors and subnational governments and their resources in global goals implementation. The proposals that we are bringing are local pacts for the future and individual climate and SDGs action app and platform. And we presented our solutions in more detail already at the UN Habitat and Glotcher conference in September last year at UN headquarters, and also at a side event to the Partnership Forum last week. Videos from those events are all on UN Web TV, and we have submitted also our ideas and solutions to the Pact for the Future consultation. So what is the idea of the Pact for the Future? It is about making the UN system and global goals implementation relevant for the people on the street, that they really have the feeling that the work of the UN is helping them to address the challenges in their neighborhoods. And so how does it work? Citizens identify, localize, and specify challenges in their neighborhoods, and then this is put into an information system. There's a built knowledge base about what the challenge is, how it relates to SDGs, and what action can be taken, what impact can be achieved. And this is a collaborative data collection and citizen science effort enabled with the platform that we are developing with a consortium of digital solution providers. And then, based on this knowledge about a challenge, there is the step of creating a community of those who are affected by the challenge, or those who have resources that want to contribute to the solution of the challenge. And then in the next step, there is the individual pledges of members of the community are combined in give and get relations, and this is then the local pact for the future. Next step is then that people take actions, documentation, verification, certification, and attributions of action and impact is necessary. And so we have an actionable pact where people on the ground are engaged. This is then combined also with web technology enabled resource mobilization innovation. We have digital art for climate as an initiative, but also digital stamps. Here a photo from a workshop at the COP28 Digital Innovation Pavilion with the UAE Post Authority. There is a link that we can share later. And gamification is a key element also of these local pacts and micro-social entrepreneurship, business model innovation. Those who contribute in citizen science can be rewarded. Creative economy, storytelling can be rewarded, and many more steps and elements that can make local SDGs action fun. And the way to connect the individual with the global system, with the UN system, is on the mobile phones. We need to develop an app, an individual SDGs and climate action app, where people can report individual action, where social networking is possible, entrepreneurship, ecosystem, e-commerce systems can be set up, entertainment, games, and people are supported in individual legacy building. These are the solutions that we're working on. There will be a 2 weeks festival in Austria, last week of May and first week of June. Everybody kindly invited. Yeah, here is our link. And thanks to Ali and his team for having organized.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil. All right. Thank you, Miro, for your presentation. And next, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Steve Chu for his conversation and his remarks on the inclusion of youth with the help of digital information.
Thanks, Ali, and thank you to everyone for being here. I'm really excited for this conversation and following Miro and thinking about how we translate digital innovations also back into physical engagement, right? As we look at how we're consulting with young people around the world, one challenge that we're finding is a lot of solutions that are being proposed are merely digital oriented. Right? They're like, oh, how do we bring more young people's voices in a digital platform? And then we create this digital community. But there's this intrinsic falsehood where like that this doesn't connect you back to local action. And it might inspire you as an individual, but like how do you really come back to create the impact that we need? Right? And we also see this in a moment when people are becoming, it's like that post-COVID era where like we're kind of getting turned off by Zoom calls, like we don't want to be in this many like group chats anymore. We want to actually be doing the work. Right? And so, and that also paired with like this epidemic of loneliness, I think is this very interesting backdrop where here at the UN we're talking about like what does it mean to create a better future, and we have a really tremendous opportunity to really model that, right? So drawing on Saji's experience of how we've been engaging and mobilizing young people through both digital and physical platforms, I want to quickly talk in the 4 minutes that I have, yeah, Ali? To like quickly share some insights and thoughts in terms of how we as individual organizations can really amplify our youth community building to then feed back into these high-level UN processes, right? So what we see within the Summit of the Future process is there's open consultations, right? And then each individual organization that's coming into these consultations, we have the opportunity to bring our voice, right? But what's often missing from this picture is the voices of young people. Right? But how do you get young people to care about something that seems so far removed from them? We have to be more creative with our approaches. We need to be utilizing the arts. We need to be utilizing media in different ways that don't just speak to the process itself, but speak to the opportunity. Right? Once in a lifetime is a tremendous catch, and it's a great hook because we're really saying this is our ability to shape the trajectory of our future. Right? This is visionary-based work, and we love visionary-based work. But then when you think about this visionary-based work, and we're really talking about like consulting young people, how do you get young people to like care? How do you get them to come together? Oftentimes it's not the physical innovation, it's actually not the digital innovation, it's the physical innovation and the spiritual innovation that comes into these two spaces, right? So I want to build on something that I think has also been challenged within our societies recently, which has been the death of third spaces. Right? We're seeing this increasingly like atomization of individualism come into play in our large-scale societies. More people are consumed and oriented towards consumption, less towards creation, and we're really seeing Gen Z push and champion like the importance of this balance of creation with consumption. Right? But how do you create when like spaces are unaffordable, when places are inaccessible? We need better third spaces, right? So that's part of why organizations like CsocD have been really investing in opening up our spaces, whether those are service centers, community homes, our own homes, to invite young people in to participate in different consultations, right? And we're not saying that this consultation is like themed to the Summit of the Future, right? We're saying like, how can we create a better community? Right? How can we create solutions that address this particular problem? And oh, by the way, that just might happen to address something that is thematically aligned with the Summit of the Future, right? But when it gets too big, sometimes we get lost in the sauce, right? And so creating these third spaces that allow for people to really come in requires at some level also intergenerational dialogue and support, right? And so as we look at how we can better include young people in these processes, we need intergenerational allies, and we need to draw on their wisdom in order to be able to navigate these spaces in knowing how it's traditionally navigated, but then knowing how we can also break that a little to kind of like push that youth lens as well. But all of that requires a level of intergenerational mentorship, trust, and investment that we talk that we're really interested in, right? And at the end of the day, this isn't like a when will this happen? It's an inevitability, right? Because we either invest in our youth in an intergenerational manner and create succession plans, create mentorship plans, or the older generation dies off and we lose all that wisdom and experience. And we think that's a really big shame, right? So as organizations thinking about what third spaces do we have right now, how can we open them up for new young people to come into the picture, and then also provide the resourcing so those young people actually have the opportunity to step in, right? Because it's one thing to say, we have a space. It's another thing to say, we have space, free childcare, food for you, and you can gather after work, right? And it's a totally different lens that allows for a deeper level of inclusivity and community building to come into play. And we're doing all this ultimately because we want to rebuild trust. Right, in the Pact of the Future, we talk about how like governments need to deliver on their commitments in order to rebuild the trust that is needed, right? And similarly, as we think about engaging with young people don't step into certain spaces because the trust has been eroded already, right? And this process of repairing that trust requires of us also a spiritual innovation as well, right? We're not here to exploit young people. We're not here to extract from them. We're here in a sense of mutual respect and interdependence and wanting to really help this collective grow that we engage with young people, right? And if we're operating at a values level that is different from where we should be, right? And young people can kind of sense that, right? You're like, oh, like I have a consultation, you get a free gift card, but it's going to be extracted, it's going to be exploitative, and you're not actually going to like really feel empowered after this. I don't need a gift card, like I'm fine, right? But like if you're really in this space of collaboration and like cooperation and like Miroslav was saying earlier, co-creation, I think there's tremendous opportunity there.
Thank you so much, Steve. Next, I would like to invite Ms. Gemmer for her remarks. She's a representative to the UN Department of Global Communications for Journalist Writer Foundation, and she's also a human rights activist. So, Gemmer,
Thank you so much, and for this kind invitation to be a part of this moving discussion as we pave the way towards very important critical UN gatherings along the way to SOC. The forum, CSW, IAAI will have upcoming sessions, and surely a Pact for the Future this September. As introduced, I'm the United Nations representative of Journalism Americas Foundation. I'm also a human rights advocate working and reporting on political rights violations, authoritarianism, rule of law, and gender mainstreaming of sustainable development goals. So as we dive into a discussion on how to meaningfully involve and empower youth participation in decision-making, in peace and security, human rights advocacy, I think for most, we must definitely have a comprehensive trajectory on where we are standing as of today in terms of a global decline in all pillars of democracy. Because the world now has more closed autocracies than liberal democracies for the first time in the last 2 decades, which means that around 5.7 billion people live in autocracies, countries with very high rates of youth population. Freedom of expression declined in 35 countries just last year. According to Freedom House, internet freedom has declined for the 13th consecutive year. So around 78% of the global population live in countries where they're losing their freedom to post on social media outlets about their religious, social, political identity, their opinion. So how do we empower youth under these pressing settings? Secretary General also noted very recently that conflict-related deaths have been pulling behind all the timely and gender-sensitive implementation of all the 17 SDGs. But reversing this negative trend line is really possible, and that's only achievable if we are able to trust fully in young leaders, well-skilled youth professionals, believing the agency of global citizens leading the way, particularly in decision-making bodies of political governance and other levels of civil society engagements. and we must definitely disseminate more youth-led solutions to these pressing challenges. Last year, I attended the International Youth Day celebration hosted by AFS at the United Nations, and there was a live survey, very interesting, conducted at that gathering. And youth were asked to vote on what were the biggest challenges that they think in their respective countries ahead of the way for the timely achievement of SDGs. And with a very huge gap in between, inactive governments were shown as the most persistent challenge in the eyes of youth for sustainable peace and development. I mean, youth in this field are already pioneers, but I think majorities have lost their trust in peaceful governance, in inclusive ruling, where the rule of law, in fact, must be upheld at all times. So, this long-lasting impact of political violence, the generational trauma of losing loved ones or being subjected to enforced displacement, I think these are the heaviest burdens these days on the shoulders of our young generations. And we must definitely work on how to mitigate these two very critical problems. And over the last decade, I have worked with various communities who were impacted by political and social purge, and the resilience of young leaders, young professionals, rebuilding their lives all from scratch is amazing. We have so much to learn. And wrapping up, a couple more reflections. Last week I was at Washington, D.C. attending International Religious Freedom Summit that gathered over thousands of human rights defenders. And there were many youth-led solutions to our contemporary conflicts that we unfortunately see and witness. A Palestinian activist spoke on a wonderful youth-led local project where Israeli and Palestinian youth were joining their forces together to deliver humanitarian access to both sides. These are not very visible. We must echo these more on global agendas. And we do know that when youth and women are represented on the table, there is about 35% more for sustainable peace to prevail itself. So we cannot give on this chance. So given the realities of our geopolitical complexities, I'll say we must be training young individuals to be leaders, peacefully carrying on their human rights advocacy capabilities in the midst of today's current political challenges. And I refer to fostering capacity building sessions on how to increase their media literacy, very important. How to better use artificial intelligence in human rights advocacy. Organize impactful social media campaigns where youth are very transformative. Ensure safety of citizen young journalists reporting from conflict zones. How to mitigate digital surveillance and harassment online. So overcoming these secondary traumas, mobilizing in peaceful ways, I think those are some of the critical action areas where we have to join our forces to lead the way forward, and time is really now to give the steering to young professionals. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was indeed very thoughtful. And next, I would like to give the floor to Elke, who is also the youth delegate to the permanent mission of Germany to the United Nations. And we would like to hear something more about it. I know that to speak about on length about how we can get engaged with the back of the future, back for the future, how important it is. But we actually want to know how many people should know that the summit of the future is important, and how possibly they can get engaged within their local communities for the summit of the future.
Absolutely, thank you so much for this
A
question.
little louder because the mic.
Oh, sorry. Absolutely, thank you so much for these questions. I really try to speak loud so you can hear me. Yeah, as you said, I'm Ilk, I'm the other German youth delegate, and I'm going to add to the things that Les mentioned already. So meaningful youth engagement at the Summit of the Future is of utmost importance. I think we can all agree to that. That's why we're here in the room. I see many young faces as well. So great to be here. But I really want to stress that having young people in the room for that one-day summit is not enough. Negotiations for the Pacts of the Future we heard are starting right now. So it is really important that we crucially need to engage young people to be involved in these negotiations and create a future they want to see. I'm actually only going to find out one more thing adding to the things that Lev mentioned already, and this is that member state delegations must involve their youth delegates now to comment on the draft that has been out for a couple of days from their perspective. And I mean not just Chapter 4, we heard Chapter 4 is on youth and future generations, but youth is a cross-cutting issue. We need to comment on all the chapters that are out. For the summit itself, because that was the main question, I really wish to see both official UN youth delegates as us, but also civil society youth, many of you are here in the room, meaningfully engaged representatives. Because we need to move past these unethical forms of representation, such as tokenism or co-option. Further, it must be ensured that participation in both the civil society youth summit that you mentioned, Ali, but also the Summit of the Future itself is inclusive, accessible, and funded for young people in all their diversity and also from different geographic locations. Personally, I know that the New York craziness can also affect a young person physically, but also mentally. So for me, it's really important that we manage to create safe spaces during both the Youth Summit, but also the Summit of the Future itself, where young people can go to and feel heard, feel understood, feel comfortable, and also take a break from the many things that are going on in the world. But also, meaningful youth engagement is about preparation. Many youth organizations and youth leaders have started to explain the Summit of the Future, as well as ways to get involved in the Summit of the Future, and this is amazing. However, what we often see is a lack of support when it comes to knowledge transfer and the area of soft skills. So when we got here, we didn't really know how to comment on a draft document. Who are the people we need to network with if we want to push our ideas forward? And what do we prioritize, or what do we need to let go because there's not enough time for it? These are just examples to help understand where I'm getting at. So, in summary, meaningful youth engagement at the Summit of the Future must be a priority. We need to make that happen in terms of support. We need everyone to help us getting there, where we want to have that meaningful youth engagement. And I think youth delegates in their delegations can be a pivotal role in bridging that civil society, youth, and member state delegations, thanks to having these both hats, right? Being a young person from a civil society background, but also being a delegate. I highly recommend civil society, youth organizations, and young people to also collaborate with youth delegates in these spaces, because I think it's very valuable that we have a supportive youth bubble here in New York and work together in terms of the Summit of the Future, but also other UN conferences. And I think in terms of engaging in the civil society way, I really want to encourage talking to the Alliance of the Future, reach out to Ali for engaging in the Youth Summit. This can be a great engagement opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Olga. I mean, it's really important what you mentioned about how we can get engaged. And one of the things that we're really pushing hard, two things that we're really pushing hard, as you all know that, and the team that we are working together knows that we're pushing hard, for having 5 website events at the Summit of the Future that are led and planned by the young people like these present in the room. And the second is to have an informal Youth Summit of the Future with the support of the civil society organizations and members that want to join and the other UN entities, because there are a lot of young people who do not have access to such resources, especially during the time of the General Assembly where the access is very limited. We are very much willing to provide an external access to the Youth Summit of the Future when we are not at the UN, somewhere outside during those days, and having a very much inclusive gathering. With that being said, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Howard Yala, who is Chief of the Civil Society Unit, and also she supervised the Youth Representative Steering Committee for the UN Department of Global Communications. And the 2-point agenda for her to have a conversation is, one is like the civil society conference that's going to take place in May, how many people can participate and be part of it. And the second, just what Joseph Ilka pointed out, is like, the youth delegates of the permanent missions and the civil society youth, and how they can collaborate. And actually collaborate and make it happen.
Well, hi everybody. I'm sorry I'm late coming in and out, but if you haven't heard, or if you don't know, now you should know that May 9 and 10, the Department of Global Communication will host the 69th UN Civil Society Conference. So, although back and forth, this question about money that I've been going back and forth about, I was working on the project document. So the big news is that we will be in Nairobi at the UN offices in Nairobi, commonly called UNON. I'm excited to go back because I worked in UN Habitat for 10 years, so Nairobi is a beautiful place, and I encourage everybody who can come to really be there. And of course, the conference will be live streamed. Now, it's important for me, being an African from Sierra Leone, it's the first time in 68 editions that the UN Civil Society Conference is going to Africa. So my African people and African friends, let's be sure to be there and to represent, okay? Now, of course, the conference is open to civil society all over the place. Traditionally, it was planned by the DGC NGOs and open to everyone. But with the our common agenda and the Summit of the Future, we opened it more to make it more inclusive in the planning as well as the attendance. So right now, we just selected, when I say we, it's really civil society, because the Department of Global Communication, Civil Society Unit, my office, has been working with a NGO nominations task force that included 2 representatives from the Global NGO Executive Committee that's made up of all DGC associated NGOs, with 2 reps from Congo, here in Kinshasa, 2 reps from major groups, and 2 reps from the Coalition for the UNDP. So we really had a joint effort being inclusive, and with that, 2 civil society co-chairs were selected. One is Udara Yusuf, and she's a young person, so that's awesome. She's from the Global South. The second one is Carol, and her last name is coming to me, but she's from Nairobi. And with Carol Adiengo, which I'm sure I'm pronouncing wrong. Udara is with the Stimson Center, and Carol is with Help Age International. So we're really excited because the civil society coaches manage this conference. In the planning phase, there's also a UN conference chair, and that is Maher Nasser, my director. But once the conference starts, UN pulls back, and civil society is in charge. Now, the planning process of this conference is that there are different subcommittees. So that's what we're working on today and tomorrow. That we had put out a call in December to anyone. It was open to mostly NGOs that have ECOSOC status and DGC status. Why? Because listen, it's a madhouse, you know? So you kind of have to hit the ground running. This is a conference that we planned a year and a half. Hello, what month are we now? And the conference is in May? Almost. If we survive, I don't know. But I think we can do it with the power of civil society. So, I mean, we really wanted to have people who were aware already about the UN system and the chaos, the bureaucracy. So that's why we said for the planning committee, it's ECOSOC and DGC. But if there is some outstanding person, I mean, we will, look into that and make exceptions based on recommendations that come from NGOs. So now, why the conference? Because it's fun. The conference is great because traditionally it's a premier place for civil society to really discuss, showcase the work they're doing on UN issues. What's particular about this one is that we have the Summit of the Future coming up in September. So this conference we see as a way to ensure that civil society voices and contributions get taken into the Summit of the Future, into the Pact, at least into the zero draft. So the conference will be all about those chapters we're talking about. Now, as young people, including me, we have to be sure, not only how to get the other 4 chapters, but how to make sure youth and front and center. Surprise, surprise, I'm the focal point in the planning committee for the youth subcommittee. So, I'll be working with those civil society co-chairs and members of the youth planning committee to make sure we are present. I have done that for many years. I mean, Ali has been co-chair. Ashu's here. She was there somewhere. Has been co-chair of the conference. Steve has been a member. Many other people. And we made it in a way in Korea and Salt Lake City in 2019. There's no way they could not see or hear us. And it was phenomenal. And it's gotten to the point where at least that's too much, a third of the people who go to the conference are between the age 18 and 32. We did everything from walking from UN to Central Park, pizza parties, this party, to raise money, because there is no funding. So these are some of the things we need to get into that pact. There is no concrete funding for young people to be seen. And I'm sure it's the same for civil society in general. So I mean, this is an opportunity, I think, for us to really be present and to ensure that our thoughts, our ideas, our innovation, our concerns, our solutions make it into this pact. So the conference will be all about that, and it will be really great. For me, it will be good that it's in Kenya because Kenya's a place that's easy to get to. So you have a lot of people from the global south, across the continent, but also in other regions who will be into Kenya. And it's an opportunity for us who are coming from other places in the global north to really interact, to really see how we can exchange knowledge and ideas, visit things that are in Nairobi. I worked there for 10 years and did exciting work in what they call, the slums, I hate that word, or the informal settlements, Kibera, Mathare. The young people on the continent in the global south who don't have the resources that we have here, who are doing dynamic things. How do we capture them? How do we build on it? And how do we, help them even more? So now, the conference chairs are here, Nudara and Carol. We will start to meet weekly. We hope that we'll have the planning committees together by next week. I see some people who have applied, if my memory serves me right, and we'll just really get into it. For the preparation of the conference, we've been having a lot of internal meetings. Today we met with the SDG Action Campaign, because through the governments of Germany, they've gotten some support to help civil society go to the conference, right? So we also had a town hall. Well, we had on October 27th, core stakeholders, civil society, because we didn't have a planning committee. Like, who do we think will have something to say, to get ideas and generate the way we work? And then on December 12th, we had a town hall where we formally announced the conference. And now, I think in next week, actually, tomorrow, we'll have a second co-stakeholder meeting, just to report to people everything that's happened. And then we will close that civil society core stakeholder groups because the planning committee will be functional, right? So at the end of February, we'll have a second town hall to inform everybody and to get your ideas and tell you how to register. Visit the website, which is now up. It's very basic, but it has information you need to know. www.un.org/civil-society and go to the conference. Karibuni, Kenya, right? So we need everybody. It's all hands on deck, even when you're sleeping, to make sure that things go well. So, besides civil society, NGOs, there are lots of foundations, Ford Foundation, UN Foundation. And of course, I mentioned Germany was so instrumental in the beginning in helping us. And we have the European Union as well, and Denmark, who is supporting this conference. So I think it's really going to go a long way. For me, off the record, I would like to see more African entities and NGOs, and that's what I'm pushing for. But civil society can push for this. ECA, Economic Commission of Africa, EGA. These are, entities or organizations that are entrenched on the continent that absolutely need to be involved. In that way, we've been talking with I didn't know that there's an ECOSOC of the African Union. Did you guys know that? I didn't know that. And so they are having a meeting in Nairobi, and where they will bring NGOs from Africa, from across the continent. And we're hoping that they will be able to come to this conference as well. So I'm excited, and how can you get involved? Just talk to Ali. No. I know there are 2 people there for the Sunday of the Future. But I mean, be present, be vocal, attend our meetings, send in your contributions, and let's have ideas. And for me, even though the planning committee, has closed, but I'm very crafty and creative. We will find ways to have more open consultations with everybody else who meets the mark, so that you are involved in one way or another. One thing I want to put out there is that normally for the conference we have youth are involved in the mainstream of SDG, where we try to have at least a youth co-chair on everywhere. But we're very particular. Normally they have the youth subcommittee. This year it's called intergenerational youth. So we have to figure out how to do that. But then we normally have a declaration just for young people. So you guys have to decide, and you're still part of the main declaration, but you're gonna have to decide, do we have a unique declaration, or do we just feed into the main one? It is your conference, it is up to you, I'm waiting to serve you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I'm sorry I have to leave for another money meeting. Because I don't want to walk to Grand Central to make sure that you go to Nairobi.
So thank you so much.
The 2016 conference, the first youth outcome document came into formation, as Hava mentioned. Now, that one was known as the Gyeongju Youth Declaration, which focused on the theme of education for global citizenship, which is target 4.7 and goal number 4 of the Sustainable Development Goals Agenda. And because of the first document we drafted, and every subsequent conference has had a outcome document, so we're definitely eager to once again draft the one for this year's edition. And this again is a slightly similar process and objective as to the Summit of the Future, because we really want actions to be taken to be implemented at the local level. Now, once the conferences for all of the editions in 2016, 18, and 19 took into place, you definitely were a very integral part of the planning process in addition to the youth subcommittee. As Howard mentioned, each of the co-chairs for the respective subcommittees had one youth co-chair and another co-chair with many years experience, hence reinforcing the intergenerational collaboration as Steve mentioned earlier. Also, in terms of having mentorship, as also our esteemed German youth delegates also emphasized in their interventions, we had youth mentorship circles at the 2019 edition of the conference in Salt Lake City, Utah, in the United States of America, where again you had people with many years of experience in respective fields sharing it with people who are just starting out in the field. So once again, this is like my interest is kind of serving in is kind of personally sharing some of the stories and elements that we brought up and trying to show how the department and the Department of Global Communications and even my personal experiences have been. So these mentorship circles, again, show how DGC has been trying to, as one UN entity with outreach to society, creating this platform. Now, similar to, of course, the Summer of the Future, there was one outcome document. Steve, you must remember this as well. The 2018 edition, which was held right here at headquarters, We the Future, was the youth outcome document. That's right. And that actually focused on people-centered multilateralism, which was the theme of the 2018 edition of the conference, which again is very much integral to even the theme of the Summit of the Future. And again, to everyone who has had an opportunity to join some informal consultations in whichever capacity you're serving, thank you very much. We can again, and hopefully we can have more voices as a part of it, which again, Ali and Steve, you may remember for the 2019 edition of the conference, the outcome document, also known as the Youth Climate Compact, as the theme of that conference was building sustainable, inclusive cities and communities, similar to goal number 11. We had in-person and physical in-person and virtual consultations where we really were trying to gather the voices of youth all around the world, especially the ones who may not have been able to attend the conference. And perhaps you may remember, Stephen Ali, there were a group of dynamic youth advocates in the Gambia who were hosting a watch party of the opening ceremony of the Society Conference, and it was there were quite heavy rains and with limited electricity, but they still were able to host a watch party and they sent us photos. So just showing how much, just reiterating what everybody said, collective action to ensure that all voices are included. And we are most certainly looking forward to this edition, so please do feel free to join the next edition of the conference in Kenya. And to, as I end my intervention, as American anthropologist Margaret Mead once said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's only the thing that ever has. So with that, I'd like to convey my gratitude to all the organizers, and of course, Ali, who's one of the co-founders of the International Youth Conference, which actually is one of the initiatives that came from the 2019 edition. Thank you very much, and I pass it back to you, Ali.
Thank you for mentioning actually the International Youth Conference, because I'm going to talk to you later about that as we will move towards the ending later in the program. That I should mention that International Youth Conference was the program that came out of the UN Civil Society Conference in 2019, and the aim was of the International Youth Conference was to reach out young people, take the agenda of the UN to the youth, not ask them to come and attend conferences in Salt Lake City or New York City, Geneva, Nairobi, and take the UN agenda and content to them. And since then, we have been doing successfully with that in partnership with the UN Department of Global Communication, the UN Habitat, IOM, IAAI, AFS, and other civil society organizations are coming forward with their resources and helping let us grow. And we do it twice a year. And in a few months, we're gonna do its 9th edition in Los Angeles, and it's absolutely free to join for anyone who wants to join in person or in online. And we do collaborations with universities and colleges on that. And for the 9th edition, we have been doing collaboration with the University of California, Los Angeles, specifically their Department of Public Affairs, who is sponsoring the whole venue and everything for the conference. With that, I would like to give the floor to our last speaker, and then we're gonna give the floor to all of you. If you have any remarks and questions, we're happy to answer that. Before that, I would like to give the floor to Sushmita, who is the representative of Asia Initiative, and she is expert in urban development, and I've been seeing her, and she's been speaking a lot about inclusion of youth in the urban dwellings. So, Sushmita, floor is yours.
Thank you, Ali. Pleasure to be here. And so I'm an urban planner and urban policy analyst. So I work on social and environmental impact projects globally across almost 5+ countries across the world. And I'm also a board member of Asia Initiatives, where we work with grassroots organizations. We work with communities and youth across the globe to kind of leverage the power of social capital, bringing them together and promote sustainable development. So as we talk about the several conferences and the Summit of the Future that we're going to attend this year, I wanted to reflect on the EcoSoc Youth Forum that happened last year. I think we widely acknowledge that, youth need a seat in various conferences, various tables, but we also need youth on urban decision-making tables in their own country. I think representation is important, but actually like having youth on local urban decision-making tables, acknowledging their work locally is kind of critical. And as a person who's working in the space of designing future cities and also urban policies, I think really empowering youth to really plan the future of their cities and in a more inclusive approach is kind of critical. So why do we think youth have to be represented in urban political tables and urban decision-making tables? Because youth will be the future leaders and decision makers in our cities and towns worldwide. I think cities we've seen emerging challenges from climate change to technology challenges, social challenges. The pandemic kind of brought a broader range of like health and mental health challenges. So I think having youth being a part of all these decision-making tables and understanding these challenges can bring in much more forward-thinking solutions. And as youth, we kind of use social media, several platforms, so we can kind of really build that social capital. We can kind of transfer the knowledge across countries, across borders. So that's why I think it's kind of very important to have them play an active role in shaping the communities and the cities that we live in. So how do we really build this social capital among youth, and how do we empower them to make their communities, neighborhoods, and cities better? So I wanted to talk about a small initiative from our organization, Asia Initiatives. It's called the SOCS. So what is SOCS? So SOCS is social capital credits. So it's actually a virtual currency that we use to promote social good. So SOCS actually serves as an incentive. So when, say, you work on projects like volunteering, recycling, waste management, environmental initiatives among their communities, they earn this virtual currency. And this can be internally redeemed for education, healthcare, skill development, and other facilities that help them grow. So what happens is this exchange of like goods and services through more like peer-to-peer, social credit transaction helps foster more sustainable community, kind of creates a more self-sustaining economy, and also supports more positive social and environmental behavior among youth. So we've kind of implemented this across like several countries in US, India, Ghana, Kenya, and we're seeing that building that community social capital can be really critical to developing a more sustainable future and sustainable city. The second I wanted to talk about is like participatory planning process, but more importantly, creating safe space for this participatory planning process. Can we create safe public spaces, safe spaces where youth can exchange and contribute their ideas and perspectives and kind of engage in this decision making? The third is also like giving equitable access to social infrastructure amenities. A lot of the times we're privileged to be here and to have this platform, but to really give access to other amenities like education, healthcare, transportation, say affordable housing, also access to cultural institutions that can really support youth well-being and development. And also, in order to continue their investing on quality education and like lifelong learning opportunities for young people. And this does not only include schools and universities, but also libraries, vocational training centers, online learning platforms, really open access to these platforms across the globe. Really empowers them to be a part of their communities, their urban decision-making process. So at Asia Initiatives, I wanted to reflect on like how we really look at engaging youth, especially girls, children, and women, and really being active participants of their communities and cities. And also like creating that leadership skill, providing them opportunities for youth-led initiatives and creating a real platform for young people to engage in like urban decision making. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sushmita, for your valuable input. Now we would like to open the floor for everyone in the room. If you have any remarks or questions from all of the speakers here, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so very much for this wonderful opportunity and time to speak. My name is Tara Renee. I'm the president of African American Women in Cinema, and certainly enjoyed all of what I was able to catch. And I just want to, by way of comment and support, in regards to your conference, we would certainly be willing to be supportive in terms of messaging. And so I will make sure you have my contact information, and we could discuss how what that could look like. Thank you for this time.
Thank you so much. Anyone else in the room? Please go ahead.
Hi, I'd like to thank everyone. This has been really enlightening, and it's been lovely to have a space, especially for youth. I'm the president of an entirely youth-run, youth-serving NGO. We've had ECOSOC consultative status since 2006. And I had a few questions and comments for the panelists. Overall, everything was incredibly enlightening, so thank you for that. I think my first question is for Sushmita. I guess I'm interested regarding the social capital credit scheme with volunteering and other ways of engaging with the community and use social capital that can be dispensed on education, healthcare, and other facilities. And I'm wondering if this earning is proportionate to your positionality. For example, if you are lower income, do you get more social capital for the same amount of engagement? Because one thing that would concern me a little bit regarding this would be that those who are less likely to engage in this type of aspect might be especially disenfranchised, and then in addition to general income differentials, there will be an additional layer of disparity and income inequality with social capital on top of additional inequality that's already existing. So I guess concerning that was something I was wondering. Another thing I really wanted to speak about too, just in case I don't get to have another time to speak, is about youth action online. I really enjoyed what Steve was talking about regarding community building and taking that off the online presence. And one thing that I'm especially concerned about is, especially at these high-level interventions, I find that online and hybrid events tend to have a second tier, a second class of citizens, usually from the global south, relegated to a Zoom room in which little monitoring and which little engagement is able to occur. And so I urge everyone in this room who are likely to host events like this, we've hosted them in the past as well, but it's something that we think, as an organization should be especially valuable, is to make sure that engagement is viable, and especially for those who are joining online, those are likely to be the most important voices at the conference. Those are likely to be the people who have the least access, and the most amount of input should be considered. So we really urge everyone in this room, and maybe if panelists would like to consider a way that you found it meaningful for engagement to occur online and to take that into the physical world, for lower income people, especially people in the global south. Thank you.
So Shmita, you can go ahead first and then I'll address the second part.
Sure. I think to really reflect on that, you brought up a very important and critical, challenge that we see. But I think when we create these programs, the social capital credit programs, we actually work on ground with specific communities. It's not more of a generalized, app in a program that everyone uses. So we kind of work with a specific community. We kind of hear them, understand what are the challenges they face and like what are the facilities they need, and then we kind of curate the SOCS menu. So what the SOCS menu contains is like, how do people redeem these points and how do people, work for these points? So then we kind of create a specific menu for the community, and then from there, we kind of implement the SOCS program. So it's kind of very specific to each community, the challenges they face and their needs and wants.
Thank you.
Can I make one comment here? I'm from HHTIP, same as the lady over there. Hi. You did a wonderful job. I must say, I must be the most senior person here. I was actually joking and saying, yes, you guys can lead a host to water and also make me drink as well. But anyway, I think, to empower young people, especially thinking about underserved communities. You mentioned global south. So how would you do that? One, you have to think of what would be the most efficient way of doing it. Maybe, you have to think about broadband, that kind of thing. So I just want to mention one project, especially in India. Asian has the biggest project in India, very small organization. But anyway, so India has actually introduced, this is the federal government campaign introduced in 2014 by Prime Minister Modi. It's called JAM, J-A-M. Basically, it's 3 systems. One is technological thing, basically iPhone for everyone, biometric ID for everyone, so bank account for everyone. So during COVID-19, the federal government managed to get money, send the money to the local government, from local government to the rural areas, especially those people of landless, underserved communities. So I think that's maybe, I thought it might be interesting to think about.
I love the reflections on how online and hybrid groups can often fall into like a second-tier citizenship in this global conversation. I often feel that within UN spaces, when you do engage online, it can feel a little hollow and empty, right? And so how do you kind of bring life back into those spaces? We've been experimenting within our own organization and through our collectives as well. And what we find is you essentially require champions and messengers to come and re-engage with that community after the fact or during the fact, right? And usually during the fact, it's a little harder because of just like resourcing and manpower. Usually the would-be champions are like in person there, right? But who takes the message back to the community, meets with them, maybe still in an online format, but in a more intimate setting, or they are able to physically go in person, debrief, and kind of walk through where these opportunities are, right? Because oftentimes in online settings, you have maybe 5 minutes for questions at the end of a session, and then that's it, right? Versus if you're able to then curate an hour like debrief after that session finishes, you have a healthier space where that community can express their needs, inputs, and ideas, right? And so what we found within our work has been that through this like more communal structure of knowledge sharing, we're able to bring the global back to the local and contextualize it in a way that allows them to truly care about the issue. And then by feeling like their voices are heard, that there's life in this issue, that they have agency and say into things, and they know that their champion can bring anything back to the global, they feel more empowered at a local level to really step up whatever they're doing.
I want to add this thing to, as Steve says, that there are many initiatives, and we have earlier talked about the International Youth Conference. Basically, it was an experiment. And when we started this experiment, no one wanted to support it or help it or anything like zero logistical support, nothing, just a go ahead, okay, you can go ahead and organize the International Youth Conference. And blessings are there. So we just have the blessings. When we started this initiative, because we have seen the result of outreach during the civil society conference, and I was co-chair, and the physical result was the 47% of the attendance was under the age of 29. And then there was a large bracket of 29 to 34 as well, physical presence in Salt Lake City. Besides that, for the first time, there was a hybrid models all across the world. People hosted the watch parties and did their own thing, and we owned their being a youth coaches. We owned their activity and say that this is a UN activity taking place in XYZ village or the remote area, and included their input. So we wanted to continue this thing, and we created International Youth Conference, and we continue doing the experiment after experiment, and that was the reason that we are hosting it after every 6 months. One is in May, and then other one we host in September in New York in connection with the UN General Assembly. And the main aim has been so successful that we've been able to reach out people through hybrid mode in different areas where they have not even heard about the UN. They don't even know about what the SDGs are. And we have done consultations with them. And earlier, I think I was sharing with Ilkan Lab that we did run the consultation online, and we were able to reach out almost 400,000 young people in 10 days and get their input. And of course, we were not able to read all the inputs. 400,000 is a big number, but whatever inputs I read, more than 60% don't know anything about the SDGs, what the UN does, what they know about it. The UN is maybe just the peace force because they're having a conflict in their place, or they know about the UNICEF because about the education, but what are the sustainable development goals? Forget about the summit of the future. And so that was the big issue, and I'm proud to say that with the help of UN Global Communications, UN Habitat, IOM, and our civil society partners, we were able to reach out such people in their communities, and we are engaging them locally in their communities, and we're taking the message of the UN right there on their doorstep in their local language, respecting their local culture, and that's the role the local leaders have to play. We can equip them with the knowledge and the resources, whatever we have, and that's what we are doing. And then everything depends on the local leaders and the local champions there. And it's a two-way thing. It's not just that they are present over there, and now from that hybrid model, we have been successfully engaging and inviting those young people either in person if they can come, or hybridly getting involved into the conversation and being part of the decision making and in the panels at EcoSoc Forum, high-level political forum, even at the side events at the UN General Assembly, the side events such like these, and list goes on and on. And it is a still ongoing experiment that we are doing, and now we're getting more support from the UN agencies and departments and other international organizations. And I think we're still not successful in having the model that you were talking about and the model that Steve is saying, that it's an ongoing struggle we are doing, and it's required a lot of brainstorming, because we are trying to reach out people who do not have internet, who do not have schools. We're trying to take the message of UN to them, and at certain places we're successful in doing so. We have evidences, we have everything, we are working with those leaders, but there's a lot more needed to be done, and that's where we need support from the member states, civil society organizations, the UN agencies, the headquarters, and all the resources we can for that. Thank you. Any other question, remark from anyone? Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Jessica. I want to thank you again for this amazing panel. It was very insightful and for also allowing me the time to speak. I am a delegate to ESME's NGO, Legal Youth Advisory Delegation. And I just had a quick question. I thought that the idea about social media being linked to social capital, I found that very intriguing. But I was wondering, especially within a context in which third spaces have eroded, and we're seeing more and more advocacy being done online through social media, do you think that in any way, especially in an international context in which we need to be allies and be in solidarity with different people from different regions, in an international sense, do you think that social media has decreased social capital, in fact? and our ability to do that, because I think, at least speaking from the global north, I don't want to call social media advocacy cheap in any way, but it can be easy to be complacent, I guess, in just posting something to your Instagram story and feeling that you have done something for this global issue in which in reality you have not given up anything to yourself, or in any substantial way you have not made a sacrifice to solve these challenges or to progress this issue. So I guess, have you found that in some way social media decreasing social capital? And two, if so, do you feel that increasing education and global citizenship is necessary, especially in this technological age? Because I think social media is a useful tool. It is an absolutely necessary tool to enhance all of these goals that we were talking about. But do you think that furthering global citizenship is necessary to this?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I think when it comes to youth engagement, I will try to take it. When it comes to social media engagement, a very important thing you talked about, and I hope I did not get this the wrong way, is how do we engage, and is that a cheap way of engaging? But I really feel like for young people, especially, to engage in a way that is meaningful and to be involved in these issues, there has to be a way for them to engage, and there has to be a clear road. I think many young people engage with social media because that's the only way to get involved, because they're not aware of the opportunities that are there, or they don't have the resources, the funding, the time, quite frankly, to get involved in other ways. And Ilka and I often talk about the first step is being heard, and the next step is to do something in the means that you can do something. I think I'll end there and hand over to who's furiously screaming.
I got notes. I love it. I think like part of me feels that social media can disguise itself as a facility of community, right? Like it's a simulacra of community that if that is the only thing you have, it can feel very hollow and empty, right? And so I love that Lev goes from this framework of we want to be heard first, and then we want to take action, right? So I would say, like, for those who are advocating online, for those who engage with social media, the beauty of social media is when it like awakens you to a need, and then it provides an avenue for action, right? So for those who can only have the time or energy to advocate on social media alone, I think advocate, like say the things you need to say, be heard, but also share what the pathway for others who might be reading your messages can be for deeper action, right? And then as that collective group builds and you see that there's this community that is forming around you as you gain more followers, or you strengthen your messaging, or you build like this brand, I think it's up to us as those who are on these platforms to think about how we can translate that back into action at a local level, right? Whether that means now this this social media page or like your group is now creating like subgroups that are like localized, like, oh, I'm in this community area and we can come together to maybe think of a project. Or maybe it's a purely digital global citizen-esque platform and group, but is working to implement like a framework across different cities and like experimenting on the same principle of like, what happens if we like plant trees on the side of the road, right? And then like each individual is like looking to take that action, but they're taking that action together in this digital space. Yeah.
I can have a couple insights to add on this. Particularly at countries where right to peaceful protest is very much limited, you take the movement to social media. And really the resistance, peaceful resistance on social media platforms, really state authorities do know that it's their image on global arena. Because even though the internet access might be limited, for example, given XYZ country, they do know that when you tag people, when you tag UN special rapporteurs, treaty bodies, they do get attention, and follow-up actions are very swiftly got back from UN treaty bodies. For example, we have organized many social media campaigns where the result was really successful, and we were able to ignite political will to implement the already existing human rights mechanisms, treaty bodies, or conventions where that member state is already a state party, but the political will was the missing piece for the implementation. So, particularly in autocratic regimes, social media is the #1 common tool. Thank you.
Anyone more questions? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also a delegate with the Middle Youth Advisory Delegation, and I wanted to express this question towards the youth delegates here today that have been expressing the need to really uplift civil society voices and also participation, especially at the youth level. But at the same time, like as a youth organization that's been here since like 2006, I find it hard to sort of navigate that system, especially having that outside perspective and not really being in the decision table, not being actually beside those community representatives. So as youth delegates, I was wondering what you'd say is the most important aspect of really influencing those sort of policy decisions and also implementations in a way in which you're not even associated with the community representative, but you're here to still uplift the voices of others. Because as a youth civil society, it is often difficult. Like just because I have a midterm next week doesn't mean that doesn't make me less determined to try to make a change in the world, right? But that's what I want to ask the youth delegates here today.
I can start and you can build on it. One thing that I was focusing on is the bridge, right? Because youth delegates are both. We are civil society youth. I'm a scout, for example. I work with the scouts on the German level, but also on the world level, the World Organization. And taking that experience with me into the delegation role is so beneficial. And that's why I also do tours through Germany to really get in touch with youth organizations in Germany, talk to young people about their lived reality, the demands they have for the United Nations here in discussions at the Commission for Social Development, but also at the General Assembly. And we can really open to engage with civil society here in Europe locally, as well as we brought Fridays for Future USA to the campus and had a conversation with them. And I think that's one way to engage as civil society, to find youth delegates, reach out, ask for a meeting, for a coffee, for a tour through the UN. That's what we love doing, because when you tour through here, you start having conversations about peace and security when you stand in front of the Security Council, for example. But I understand that it must be so hard to navigate the system, because it's really hard for us to navigate the system as well. You know, there's so many sub-organizations, so many commissions, so many people with different roles and responsibilities. So that's why I think using youth delegates as a resource is great, but also like we were speaking about the summit in the future, there's the civil society tracks, so there is possibilities to handle inputs as civil society representatives. And we know that they were being taken into consideration because we had to handle our inputs as well through the civil society track. Now we have the zero draft of the Pact for the Future, and we have seen inputs that we handed in reflected in the zero draft. So I think it is an effective way to engage. Sometimes it is possible, sometimes it's not. I really understand the difficulty.
If I may add to that, as youth delegates, I think we can promise that we do our utmost to make civil society voices heard, and I echo everything that Luca said, but of course it's not enough. I mean, for many reasons. First is that most countries still don't have youth delegate programs, so they don't have the avenue and that way to reach the vision. Second, we are 2 people for Germany. That's a bottleneck more than any other. Also, midterms to write and jobs to have, and we are also youth delegate positions are volunteering positions, so there's quite a lack of resources to get everything through to the missions. I think it's a sad reality of the UN that the member states call the shots, and they will always at the end call the shots. But in terms of civil society engagement, I really think that we've seen incredible progress in that regard. I think and it's small steps, yes, but things like the zero draft of the Summit of the Future being publicly released, that's not something that UN processes usually do. I think that's a big step. Or there being civil society engagement beyond the release of the zero draft, that's also something that is a big step forward. But I think we've been talking, and you brought this up a lot, I think there is a necessity for translation within the UN system that's often not seen enough. Because a lot of things that happen in the UN system, that change within the UN system, are hard to grasp as progress or as steps back from an outside perspective. And at the same time, a lot of voices that are critical to how the UN can change are not heard within the UN because the UN is so focused on its own processes, on its own agreed language, on its own negotiations, that it's really hard to engage from the outside. And as youth delegates, we've really tried to be that translation for youth in Germany and beyond. And to we have my favorite story, which I always tell, is that a young man from school told us to ask the UN to make the doner kebab €3 again. We told him we can't do that, but we can go to the UN and talk about how inflation and the economic problems make it hard for youth to engage not only economically but also socially, because going to the doner kebab, that was the third place, right? And if you can't afford that, you lose it up. And he was like, wow, you worded it much better than I did. I was like, yeah, that's why we're the youth delegation. But I think that's such a fun example for a really serious issue, which is combining the work of the UN, which is complicated and mysterious in all of its ways, with the real and tangible ideas and needs of the people the UN is trying to serve. And we still have a long way to go with that.
Well, this is, I think, one point was the inclusion where we met and we created something. And I think I met and left and Olga right after the UN General Assembly last year. And we met during when me and my colleague Camila from IAAI, we were doing the outreach on the same agenda that we need to create an alliance of like-minded people, because we wanted to create a safe and free space for youth to participate at the UN processes, because we felt that there was a lot of gatekeeping from the other entities that would not allow young people to step their foot inside the UN decision-making processes and would not give the accreditations. I have seen people who are just like finger-pointing youth that like cancel their registration or do not approve their registration because they do not have accreditation, which is absolutely disgraceful. Because we speak about inclusion, sustainable development goals, and goal number 17 is about everyone, the partnership, and I mean without the partnership of people, the common person, you cannot achieve these 17 goals at all. So we met during the process and we clicked right away because we have the same goal of having young people present inside the UN into the decision-making tables, not just this side of the table, but the table where the decisions are being made, where the consultations are being done, where you are reviewing the resolutions. That's where we need young people. And I think we are slowly and gradually working behind the scenes of making it happen. And I think this is a very unique gathering where you can see that the civil society youth and the youth delegates are sitting together and we're talking about the same thing, that we all want the same thing. And I would really like to thank the permanent mission of Germany that is spearheading and being really brave and speaking about the situation that you just talked about, like let's make this a space available for youth regardless whoever they are. They have affiliation or not, do they have even badges or not. Let's find a way how we can get them involved into the process. So you're doing your part and we are doing our part in the terms of the civil society steering committee, and also combined together we have an alliance that we not often speak about, but we are very active within the system and trying to reach out different agencies, different international organizations of the UN, different headquarter organs of the UN about the same issue on how we can make it happen legally. So everyone is welcome, especially young person is welcome, and they just don't need any accreditation of a member state or the civil society organization. As an individual in his personal capacity, a person should be able to come and tell us what we're doing wrong and how we can make things happen in a better way. So yeah, we're gonna make it happen. Not today, not tomorrow, maybe the day after. Yes. I mean, it took at least 40 years of the advocacy to have. It's the advocacy of 40 years. The first time the resolution on youth was presented in 1979. And then, and that it was mentioned that we need to have some process. And then after 1979, there was a resolution was reopened in 1985, then 1989, then 1994. I have just memorized all of this process because we go and bend the table and we learn like we need. So it took 40 have a UN Youth Office at ASG, so this is the biggest step, but we're moving forward, we're gonna have something that we're talking about. Thank you. Any of the last question, remarks, or comment? Yes.
Hi, this is Mohammed Firdaus. I'm from Bangladesh. I'm leading an organization over there. It's called Community Development for Peace, which is now accredited under the UN policy on cybercrime and cybersecurity. We are now developing a treaty convention for the anti like violence extremism. So we are on the process. So I was really surprised and also observing the overall youth engagement here in the UN headquarters. We are people from the Asian or the developing country, we even think about that something that's happening inside the UN building, that people are thinking about the youth and their preparing some platform for youth for the next generation. So my question is, you were like going to organize a conference in Nairobi, and also previously you also organized some. So how do you navigate after the conference or relating the youth people to the leadership role, like that, their activity they are doing in their field, and what are the measurements or the navigation process that
you're talking about? The monitoring and evaluation of the activity, those activities. I think at the civil society conference, we say that at least what me and I should be left at the conference in 2019, and that's where I'm going to talk about the Youth Reform International Conference as an outcome of the Youth Climate Compact. And then we followed up with all of those young people that were engaged in the civil society conference in any way, and we really opened the platforms. We opened the Google Forms and what reach us out, give us your data, and we're going to reach you out. And that happened. And whatever civil society engagement we are having is all of those young leaders that we got engaged with that in 2019. And I really hope during our new civil society conference that's going to take place in 2 months, we're going to have the same mechanism of follow-up and outreach. You really have to find the leaders and reach them out, and we will always respond. 100% we will respond. So thank you so much. It's time to end this side event because